Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Rey Descalso from Pravada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Rey draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hi, how are you? This is Rey Descalso and welcome. Hold on one second. Hi, Rey Descalso here. Welcome back to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. We've been a little busy, as you can imagine. Haven't posted enough podcasts recently. So first of all, I want to apologize. I want to thank you so much for coming back. What I'd like to do today in today's podcast is I'd like to look back at an old blog that I wrote because I want to kind of critique myself and see, hey, how did I do compared to last time that I wrote an article specifically about coronavirus. So I just took off my mask. I just came from the grocery store. I shop at Publix here, where shopping is a pleasure. And, it's already August by the time, in fact, late August. Let's see, it's August 25 as I'm recording this. So I've had quite a bit of time now to get used to putting a mask on. I've had quite a bit of time to understand that it's going to be required of me. And yet when I leave my car, I go to Publix, I get the look, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, my mask. In fact, that mask that I just took off, I have to remember to put it in my back pocket so that I can always have it on me. Anyways, the point is who in the world could have realized exactly what kind of an impact, not just COVID-19, but our response to COVID-19, what kind of impact it would have on our daily lives, what kind of impact it would have on the markets, and what kind of impact it could have had on our financial plan. And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted to go back and take a look at a blog that I published on January 28. Now I want you to remember this. Where were you on January 28? January 28 seems like a lifetime ago, and it certainly was a lifestyle ago. Huh? You see what I did there? Lifetime, lifestyle. Here's why I say that. Because on January 28, you were still free to get on an airplane and go to Wuhan, China. Well, maybe not Wuhan, China, but I was supposed to go to London and Edinburgh on March 19 or 13. I can't remember exactly the date, but the day before we were supposed to get on the plane, Donald Trump shut down flights from Europe back to the United States. So we obviously didn't go. So January 28, you probably were just, probably like me, celebrating Chinese New Year. Happy Year of the Rat, you said to yourself. January 29 is my daughter's birthday, so I recall that we were probably, getting the house ready, blowing up balloons, whatever it was we were doing for her birthday party. She turned 6, by the way, and thank you for all the birthday cards that all of my listeners sent in. But at any rate, so here we are. It's January 28. If you'll remember, we had some issues going on with the Chinese government, and the news came out, and the question that I asked in this blog that I publish on the website, pravadawealth.com/blog/is-the-coronavirus-a-black-swan. That was the title. Is the coronavirus a black swan? Well, was it? Is it? And more importantly, what do you do? Because black swans come and go. Well, let me go over the article. So the article's over here. I'm kind of halfway reading it. So in the beginning of the blog, I talk about what's happening in terms of basically they were shutting down New York and Chicago about the same time, and about 3,000 people were infected as I was writing it, and 81 people were dead. And now it's August something, and you know the numbers probably as you're listening to this. There probably a bit more than 81 people had passed away. At least that's what they had reported. And then I asked the question in the blog, how do you modify your financial plan in light of this news? And that's the key question. And another key question is, well, Rey, how did you do in your article? Because you ask a question, is the coronavirus a black swan? Did you get the answer right? Well, of course, the way I write my blogs, I got to get out of jail free card. I don't predict the future. I predict the future is unpredictable. So naturally, I'll just spoil it for you now. The blog itself is a masterpiece of literary, financial writ. So here we go. Step one, what I said is don't make any changes. So in other words, if you have a financial plan, coronavirus is not a reason for you to make changes. Was I right or was I wrong? Well, you have to decide. I don't know your financial plan. I know my clients' financial plans. And my advice is that you shouldn't have to make a change to your financial plan based on coronavirus. Or any Black Swan for that matter. Your financial plan should make those, should take into account those type of issues. So if you take a look at it, one of the little graphics, and I'll put it up here on the screen in just a minute, one of the graphics I talk about is how HIV and AIDS was an epidemic in June of '81 and what it did to the market. Dengue fever in 2006, and as you can see, I'm looking behind me here to see it. Cholera, MERS, I don't remember what MERS was. That was May of 2013. Zika virus, remember Zika virus 2016. And then of course we had a measles outbreak in June of 2019 that I didn't even know about. But what we see is that there really isn't a correlation, or was not in the past a correlation, between epidemics and the response of the stock market. Now, coronavirus, I would say, is a 100-year flood. In other words, it's something that comes along and is historic, not just in what coronavirus does to the human population and to the individual, but it was a 100-year flood in terms of how we responded. I mean, if you think about it, really pretty amazing the times that we live in, that I could get on a plane this afternoon, or I could have in January 28, I could have gotten a plane and flown around the world, had breakfast or lunch the next day in India, and then come home and you know, in 64 hours, I'm back in my own bed. Well, that kind of travel and that kind of a flat earth, if you will, where we're able to just do as we want, that obviously means we are just one big happy planet. And a thing like coronavirus can spread. And if you look back at, you know, a lot of these other pneumonic plagues of 1994, not quite the same thing. And of course, if you go back to the 1920s and you go back to the Spanish flu, which was far worse in terms of being a pandemic, that obviously was a time when technology was nowhere near what it was today. And also too, their palliatives, their prophylactics, their medicine, and their technology was nowhere where it is today as well. So here I am on January 28, and the advice was don't make any changes. So was I right about that? Well, obviously when it comes to your financial plan, or your investment plan I should say, obviously January 28 or February 14 would have been a great day to sell all your stocks and sit back and wait for the bottom of the market. In hindsight, we can say that. But the reason that I feel like I'm right in having said, if I'm being honest with myself and grading myself, the reason I think that I was right about saying don't make a change is because if you make these knee-jerk reactions where your decisions are based upon the news, you will find yourself in a really bad place. And here's why. Because if you look back at, say, for instance, 2017, let me just give you an example. 2017 was one of the lowest volatility stock markets, the S&P 500, in recent memory. And I don't have the statistics here in front of me. We can get them to you. Email me if you've got a question, by the way, or click the link below if you want to yell at me and tell me I'm wrong, or you want more questions and answers about some of these topics. But 2017, we were supposed to go to war with North Korea. We were supposed to have World War III. And how did the market respond to this bad news? Great stock market, right? And so the news and the stock market are not necessarily correlated. It's hard to even know really what is correlated. That's why the stock market and price action is really what should tell you what's going on. Because we can prognosticate about the future all we want. We can predict the weather, but we have to live by the weather that is. Okay? Bring an umbrella, don't get me wrong, but if it's not raining, you know, you don't have to open the umbrella. And that is how your financial plan should be as well. You should have contingencies for not just coronavirus, but for the next Black Swan. And by the way, where we are right now, and I don't know when you're listening to this, but you should know that from January, February, obviously you'll probably remember the stock market went way down and now it's skyrocketed way back up. And to me, it shows that the chart that I show here on this blog, which again, I'll have links to, and I'm going to show a little graphic here in just a minute. It shows that these pandemics, these epidemics, really don't correlate with a logical response from the stock market. I mean, if we have 30 million people unemployed, or 20 million or 10 million more than we had before, where should the stock market be? It doesn't matter what I think, and it doesn't matter what you think. That's why you have to have an investment plan and a financial plan that is market agnostic. And the word agnostic means we don't know, and quite frankly, we don't care. We have a way of replying to it and responding to the market. And furthermore, too, obviously, the reason your financial plan has to be nimble is because the CARES Act came out. So January 28th, there was no CARES Act. Now there's a CARES Act which changes your RMD situation. RMDs are required minimum distributions. And before the legislation was passed, it was 70 and a half. You had to take out money from your IRAs or your qualified accounts. And now it's 72, about an 18-month bump. But there was more than just that, because if you didn't want to take them out from either your inherited IRAs or your traditional IRAs, and you had to take them out because of required minimum distributions of any kind, well, you didn't have to take them out in 2020. And so that was a gimme, if you will, from the government. So your financial plan has to be nimble, has to have that nimbleness built into it. But also, too, you cannot make wholesale changes based upon the news, especially on January 28th. Now what you do is you take a look back and say, okay, how are we doing? How are we doing having gone down and going back up in the market? Did we respond right? Was our portfolio where it needed to be? Was our financial plan the way it was supposed to be? Was our income strategy the way it was supposed to be? And so I think we got it right there as far as that goes. What you'll see here is that very little useful data. In other words, past outbreaks are not indicative of future events. And so even this coronavirus, who could have predicted the sharp V that we are in as of August? Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to have another downward market. I'm not saying that at all. That's the point. The point is if your financial plan, if your retirement is predicated upon a guy in a suit and a collared shirt on the second floor of his office building, getting the future right in his crystal ball and seeing like the great Karnak, well, then you don't have a financial plan. And so that is where financial planning comes in. It takes into account different types of eventualities. The second point that I made in step 2, where I kind of cover my bases, if you will, is I said you need to have a financial plan like I'm saying now. Don't make any changes. Don't be a knee-jerk reaction, but already have a plan. Step 2 is already have a plan that takes into account that a black swan is coming. And at the end of that blog that I'm referencing, I'm very strong about saying, hey, a black swan is coming. And we don't know where it's coming from. But it's about time. In fact, if you go back to November or December of 2019, I talk about the corporate debt. There's another blog, and I'll bring that up here on the screen as well in just a minute, but the corporate debt clouds I talk about. The fact that 2001 and 2008 corporate debt was sky high, and in 2019 we had a very, very similar situation. So I would even hold out to you that maybe coronavirus sounds good, but the real danger still, right now, as of August of 2020, is corporate debt. And as you know, because of the stimulus response and because of what the government's trying to do, at least the first round of stimulus, about $4 trillion was printed. So we have sovereign debt issues here in the United States. We have corporate debt issues in the United States. My guess is if we have people who have been unemployed, we probably have people with credit card debt and consumer debt that's pretty high. I don't have the numbers here in front of me. So, is another black swan. Was this just chapter 1 of coronavirus or chapter 1 of this next black swan? I don't know. The point is we have to have financial plans that take into account that black swans exist, that they're real, and they'll come from places we least expect, and that's okay because we have a financial plan that's ready for it. And so having said all that, I'm happy that you would go back and read that blog, because what I tell you is time sensitive, but I also think the principles are evergreen. They're timeless. And that is that we have to understand that there is a complete unpredictability of the market. It is wacky. I don't know what's going to happen. And also financial planning laws change, as I mentioned with the CARES Act. So if you've got a financial plan, you're doing really well. And what I'd like to invite you to do is I'd like to invite you to give me a ring and let's take a look at your financial plan. If you're an existing client, I want to go through with you how your financial plan, which we here at Pravada Wealth Management call the stability plan. Your stability plan is where we take and put your money into pillars to make sure that we can support your life. Make sense? Yeah. Now, if you aren't a client and you'd like to learn more about how a stability plan can be implemented for you, what it looks like, the principles, please click the link below. Let's have a chat, because it's what I love to do more than anything in the world. And I look forward to helping folks, and I look forward to having a conversation with you. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. It's a short one. I want to make sure that you heard a little bit of my own critique of myself. And of course, I gave myself flying colors. But let me know what you think and reach out to us. Thank you so much for listening. Rey Descalso, Privata Wealth Management, Return on Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privata Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privata Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Advisory services offered through J.W. Cole Advisors Incorporated. Securities offered through J.W. Cole Financial Incorporated. Member IFNRA, SIPC. Privata Wealth Management is an unaffiliated entity from J.W. Cole Advisors and J.W. Cole Financial. The opinions expressed by Rey Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privata Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.